Hello everyone, welcome. I hope you're doing well. Bienvenidos. Espero que todos estén muy bien. So let's talk about Spanish indirect object pronouns. What we're going to do is review a little bit and then we'll do some practice. If you haven't watched my video on direct object pronouns, I suggest you watch that first. You can find it on my channel homepage and it's also under the playlist for beginning Spanish. So the first thing is to understand what are indirect object pronouns and why do we need them. So indirect object pronouns come about because of the type of verb that you use. All verbs are not the same. Some verbs don't require an object. For example, if you ask me the question, what do you do to exercise? I can answer that question by saying simply, I walk, period. My sentence ends there. I don't need to add any other words. Some verbs require a direct object, like the verb to see. If I ask you, what do you see? If you're looking out the window, you might answer, well, I see a very interesting bird. So I see is your subject verb, and a very interesting bird is what you see. That's your direct object. So some verbs will require a direct object. And then we have other verbs that require a direct and an indirect object. And the prime example of that is the verb to give. If you give something, a direct object, to someone, your indirect object. So you need a direct object and you need an indirect object to complete the thought. You can't just say, for example, you can't just say I give and put a period on it, unless you are intending to say I give in the sense of giving up. Well, then you can do it there. But if you're talking about giving something to someone, you will say I give, and then you have to tell us what you give, and then you have to tell us to whom you give it. Okay, and that to someone is the indirect object. Now, sometimes we don't like to repeat the indirect object, so we use indirect object pronouns. So remember, you can't just say I give. You have to say what you give, and you have to say to whom you give it. So the structure of the sentence will be something like this. Subject plus verb, your direct object, the something, and then the indirect object to someone. So what are our indirect object pronouns? If I give something, I have to give it to someone, so I could give that object, whatever it is, to you, or to him, or to her. It would be strange to say to me, get to give it back to myself, but I guess in some special cases you could say that. To us is also possible, and to them. These are our indirect objects, pronouns in English. Note that there's a to you and there's a you, a to him and a him, to her and a her, to us and a to them and a them. We'll see why in just a second. So here's a nice example from English. I give the book to him. Now English allows an alternate word order for indirect objects and indirect object pronouns. If I want to move this to him a little bit up in the sentence, in other words, before the book, I have to eliminate the to and just say him. I give him the book. I give the book to him, I give him the book mean exactly the same thing. It's just optional. You can choose whichever one you want to use, but if you use the indirect object before the book, you have to drop the to. So that's why in this list, I have to me or me, to you or you, to him or him, etc. Okay, so now the Spanish part. First, for the examples, you have to know how to conjugate the verb to give. And in this case, we're going to use it in the present tense. So we have the verb in the present tense or the present indicative. And these are the forms that you have to know. Doy, I give. Doy. Das, you give. Da can mean he gives, she gives, or it gives. Damos, we give. Dais, you give. This is the vosotros form that is used primarily in Spain. Dan, they give. Either ellos dan or ellas dan. Okay, so you have to have this memorized. Doy, das, da, damos, dais, dan. The indirect objects, or the indirect object pronouns in Spanish are me, te, le, nos, os, and les. Note that for le is a little ambiguous. Le can mean to him or him, to her, or to it or it, just depending on the context. So it depends on how you use it in a sentence, the meaning. Okay? Les is the same. Les can mean to you, and this is the plural you, to more than one person. For example, if I were to say, I give you the book, and the you is more than one person, that would be the les. Les can also mean to them, to two or more other people, again, just depending on the context. Os is plural to you, then this is the informal you in Spain. In other words, when you're addressing people that you know well, if you want to say, I give you the book, you will use os to mean you. Okay, so let's start looking at some examples in Spanish. He gives the book to me, or he gives me the book. So hopefully you've studied all this already, and this is just a little bit of review for you. If not, you can just follow along and you'll figure it out. Okay, so we want to say he gives the book to me, and note that in English we can also say he gives me the book. It's the exact same idea. So how would we say this in Spanish? Well, we want our subject, and then this is the Spanish word order that you have to use. Subject, indirect object, conjugated verb, and then direct object. So let's take it one element at a time. He gives me the book, or he gives the book to me, so we start with he, él. Next, I think it's convenient if we pick the conjugated verb. You want to conjugate your verb first. Remember, verbs are super important, so always know how to conjugate your verb. So he gives would be él da. Él da. What is it that he gives? Well, the book. Él da el libro. We're only missing one thing, and that's the indirect object pronoun. So I want to say he gives the book to me, or he gives me the book, and that would be me. Él me da el libro. Él me da el libro. So how about another example? I give the book to them, or I give them the book. So we have I, yo, give, doy, yo doy, I give, que, which is what? That's the direct object. El libro, yo doy el libro, I give the book. And to them, so remember it's me, it's either me, te, le, nos, os, or les. Those are the 6 indirect object pronouns. If you memorize them, no problem. So, les. Yo les doy el libro. I give the book to them. And we'll finish it out, period. So we have a complete sentence now. Yo les doy el libro. Another example. She gives the book to me. So let's just come up with the complete answer here. She gives the book to me. Ella da el libro, and then to me would be me. So our answer is ella me da el libro. She gives the book to me. Ella me da el libro. She gives the book to me, or you can say in English, she gives me the book. Same thing. Only one way to say it in Spanish, one word order. Ella me da el libro. She gives the book to them. Ella da el libro to them. Les. Ella les da el libro. Ella les da el libro. Ella les da el libro. She gives the book to us. At this point, or once you're familiar with it, you can just fill it in off of the top of your head, right? Ella nos da el libro. Ella nos da el libro. Ella nos da el libro. We give the book to you. Nosotros te damos el libro. Nosotros te damos el libro. We give the book to you. Remember, that's the informal you. Nosotros te damos el libro. You would use the te in conjunction with using tú with someone when you speak to them informally. Okay, so here's an example that is ambiguous. Yo le doy el libro. Why is this ambiguous? Well, what does this mean? Okay, I give the book. So le, remember, can mean to you when you use usted with someone. That's the formal you. It can mean to him or it can mean to her. So this example, yo le doy el libro, without any context or any explanation, can actually mean three things. It can mean I give the book to you, if I'm addressing you with usted. I give the book to him, or I give the book to her. So this is really important. With these indirect object pronouns, with le and with les, we have to use a little phrase to clarify. It consists of the preposition a plus what we call the object of the preposition. Okay, so in order to clarify this statement, I would have to add my, we also call it an indirect object noun. We would have to add an indirect object noun to clarify. So I could say, yo le doy el libro a él, and this will mean specifically I give him the book. It's redundant, it's a repetition, and to native English speakers it does sound a little unusual. It sounds repetitive, but it's necessary in Spanish to clarify. Yo le doy el libro a él. If I want to say I give her the book, I have to say yo le doy el libro a ella. We have to add this clarifier here. Yo le doy el libro a usted. I give you the book. Or you can even use someone's name, or you can use a noun here. So yo le doy el libro a Pedro means I give Pedro the book. If you wanted to say I give the book to the professor, a female professor, la profesora, you would say yo le doy el libro a la profesora. Okay, so it's necessary to add something on the end here to clarify the le. The same thing happens with les. If I say yo les doy el libro, this can mean I give the book to you when I'm speaking to more than one person. Or it can mean I give the book to them. So the only way to clarify is by adding this clarifier at the end. A ellos, a ellas, or a ustedes. Yo les doy el libro a ellos means I give the book to them. And this could be a group of males or a mixed group of males and females. Yo les doy el libro a ellas means I give the group to them, meaning a group of females only. Yo les doy el libro a ustedes will mean I give the book to you, and the you would be more than one person that's addressed. So this is the only way to clarify what the les means. And it does sound redundant in English, but in Spanish it's quite normal. Let's try answering a few questions here. If I were to ask you the question, ¿Me das el dinero? Do you give me the money, or are you giving me the money? ¿Me das el dinero? A very important question there, right? ¿Me das el dinero? If you want to answer this question affirmatively, in English, are you giving me the money? I would say, yes, I am giving you the money, or I am giving the money to you. Either one is okay. So how do we say that in Spanish? Sí, think about it. And I'll show you the answer in a second. So me das, are you giving? Yes, I'm giving, doy, el dinero, and then te would be the best option here. Sí, te doy el dinero. Te doy el dinero. I am giving the money to you. I'm using te because it's informal, because the question that you asked is informal here. You're addressing me with tú, so more than likely I will address you back with tú. ¿Me das el dinero? Sí, te doy el dinero. I'm giving the money to you. Another question. ¿Me das un dulce? Will you give me a candy, or are you giving me a candy? Sí. Te doy un dulce. I'm giving a candy to you, or I'm giving you a candy. Te doy un dulce. Okay, so what does this mean? Tú le das una corbata a tu padre. It's a question. So it can mean, do you give a tie to your father, or are you giving a tie to your father? Remember, present tense can have more than one meaning. So let's go with, are you giving a tie to your father? We're going to respond affirmatively with sí. So what you want to say in Spanish is, yes, I am giving a tie to my father, or I am giving my father a tie. In Spanish, sí. Remember, verb, always start with your subject and verb if you're having trouble getting started. Yo doy, I give, I'm giving, yo doy. What? Una corbata, yo doy una corbata to my father, yo le doy una corbata a mi padre. And of course, you know that the yo is not necessary here, so most Spanish speakers would probably just say, le doy una corbata a mi padre. I'm giving a tie to my father. So now that you know what's going on with indirect object pronouns, I'm going to let you flex your intellectual muscles here, and we are going to do some spontaneous practice. I'll give you a prompt, give you a second to think about it, and I'll show you the answer. Okay. So I've got my state-of-the-art word processor here ready to go. So we are going to talk about giving something to someone. So let's start off with I, the subject I. So I give the money to him. How would you say that? I give the money to him. Or I give him the money. Remember, subject, always start with subject and verb. So yo doy, I give the money to him. El dinero. We're not quite finished because we need something else. To him, yo le doy el dinero. And if it's understood through context, you don't need anything else. But if I want to be very specific, I would say a él. I give the money to him. How about I give you the money? Informal you. I give you the money. Yo te doy el dinero. I give you the money, or I'm giving you the money. I give the money to you. I give the money to them. Yo les, to them, doy el dinero. Yo les doy el dinero. In order to clarify, remember, you have to say a ellos, and this could also be yo les doy el dinero a ellas. Yo les doy el dinero a ellos. Yo les doy el dinero a ellas. How about I give the money to you, and you are more than one person? I give the money to you. Yo les doy el dinero a ustedes. Yo les doy el dinero a ustedes. How about she gives the money to me? Ella me da el dinero. So maybe you're on a roll here, and we can come up with examples more quickly. Ella me da el dinero. She gives him the money. Ella le da el dinero a él. Ella le da el dinero a él. She gives the money to us. She gives us the money. Ella nos da el dinero. She gives them the money. Ella les da el dinero. She gives me the money. Ella me da el dinero. She gives you the money, informal you. ella te, sometimes I get ahead of myself with the typing here. Ella te da el dinero. I'm not the best typist, but I do okay. Ella te da el dinero. Okay, we give you the money. I'm going to leave out the nosotros because it's not necessary. So we give you the money, informal you. Te damos el dinero. We give them the money. Les damos el dinero. I'm not going to put in the clarifier. Les damos el dinero. We give her the money. Le damos el dinero a ella. Okay. He gives he gives me the money. Él me da el dinero. Okay, so I think at this point you get the idea, you know what's going on. It's just a matter of thinking about it, and I think you should be able to, once you've memorized the indirect object pronouns, you know how to conjugate, in the case of the verb dar, you know how to conjugate it. You should be able to think about just any sentence, think up any sentence with an indirect object pronoun at this point. So let's go ahead and go back to the presentation here. So we've done our spontaneous practice. You know what's going on. You can actually now create your own sentences in Spanish using indirect object pronouns. So the only other thing that you need to know at this point is that there are other verbs besides dar that use indirect object pronouns. So here's a short list of other verbs that require an indirect object. For example, comprar. When you buy something, you can just buy something. You don't need an indirect object, but you can also buy something for someone. So you will often hear the verb comprar with an indirect object pronoun when people are talking about for whom they are buying things, right? Okay, dar we've practiced with quite a bit. Deber, you know deber means, as a modal verbs means should or must, but deber also means to owe, like owe money. So we use indirect object pronouns with deber to talk about to whom we owe money to. So to owe something or money to someone. Enviar, to send, you can send something to someone. The to someone is your indirect object pronoun, so you'll hear indirect object pronouns with enviar. Llevar, you can take something to someone. Prestar, you can lend something to someone. Regalar, you can give something as a gift to someone. Servir, you can serve something to someone. Traer, you can bring something to someone. Contar, these verbs here have to do more with communication. These verbs have to do with some type of an exchange. You're exchanging, money or something else. It's going from one person to another. So these verbs have to do with communication. So you can tell something to someone, contar, and this is an O to UE stem changer. Decir, you can say something to someone. Enseñar, you can show something to someone or teach someone something. Escribir, you can write something to someone. Explicar, to explain, you explain something to someone. Hablar, you speak or you talk to someone. Leer, you can read something to someone. Pedir, you can ask for something of someone. And then preguntar, you can ask a question to someone. So all of these verbs will often have an indirect object pronoun that accompanies them. And once you're aware of that, then you're ready to go. So just off the top of your head, just speaking, for example, if I wanted to say, let's just come up with just a few examples, and then we'll end the presentation here and the practice. If I wanted to say, I'm buying her a dog. Yo le compro un perro. Or I'm buying Mary a dog. Yo le compro un perro a Mary. Deber, I owe, let's say you owe Pedro $10. I would say yo le debo $10 a Pedro. Or he owes me, él me debe. He owes me money, él me debe dinero. I'm going to send a package to someone, so I'm going to send a package to my mother. Yo le envío un paquete a mi madre. And so forth and so on. So hopefully you know how to you know what indirect objects are, you know what the indirect object pronouns are in Spanish, and at this point you should be able to recognize them when you hear them or when you see them in writing. And it takes a little practice being able to produce the indirect object pronouns when you're communicating with someone, but you can do it. It just takes a little time and practice. You have to force yourself to do it. So I hope now at this point that you feel like you have a good understanding of indirect object pronouns, and that's it for this lesson. I'll see you in the next one. Remember, you can find all of my videos on my channel homepage. All of my Spanish videos are under the playlist section, so look for them there. Okay, well that's it. Es todo. Nos vemos en la próxima lección. Chao.